Forget Apple. Forget Nvidia. Forget all the tech giants you think are running the world. They are a distraction, a light show. What if I told you the most valuable company in human history wasn't run from a Silicon Valley campus, but from a dark, wood-paneled room? For 100 years ago, a company worth, in today's money, $7.9 trillion. That's Apple, and Microsoft, and Amazon, and Saudi Aramco combined. What if I told you that this 400-year-old behemoth, this thing, never really died? That it just changed its name? That it created the very blueprint for the engineered booms, the devastating busts, the inflation that's silently stealing your savings, and the debt that has chained down entire nations? That feeling you have, that the entire game is rigged? That the rules are written by an invisible elite? It is. And this is the origin story. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far the truth is spreading. And if you're ready to see the Matrix, the real one, the one built on money, hit that subscribe button, because we are pulling back the curtain for good. To understand the lie, you have to understand the official story. The year is 1580. The world is on a knife edge. The two global superpowers, Spain and Portugal, have just merged under a single monarchy. Together, they control everything. The spice trade from Asia, the silver from the Americas. They have a total, suffocating monopoly on the global economy. Across the water, a tiny, rebellious nation is fighting for its life. The Dutch Republic. They're cornered. They're broke. They're locked in a war for independence against the Spanish juggernaut. They cannot win with guns alone. Their enemy is too big, too rich, too powerful. So, the Dutch decide not to build a bigger army. They decide to build a new idea, a new weapon. In 1602, the Dutch government does something unprecedented. They gather the 7 largest private trading companies, these East India merchants, and force them to merge into a single entity, a united company. In Dutch, the Verenigd Oostindische Company, the VOC, or as we know it, the Dutch East India Company. Now, the history books will tell you this was a breakthrough in capitalism, and it was. The VOC was the world's first publicly traded multinational corporation. It conducted the world's first IPO. It established the world's first stock exchange. This is the story they sell you. That this was all about public ownership, about ordinary citizens funding trade and sharing in the profits. A financial revolution. That is a lie. This was not a revolution for the public. This was the perfection of elite control. The VOC was not a business. It was a machine of economic warfare wrapped in the skin of a corporation. Think about what its charter actually allowed it to do. The Dutch government didn't just give the VOC a license to trade. They gave it a license to conquer. The VOC was granted sovereign powers. It could raise private armies and private navies. It could negotiate treaties with foreign kings. It could seize territory, build fortresses, and, this is the important part, wage war against anyone who got in its way. A private corporation, given the full legal authority of a state to wage war for profit, all in the name of national interest and securing trade routes. Sound familiar? It's the exact blueprint for the modern military-industrial complex. But it gets deeper. The real poison, the real innovation, was how they funded it. Limited liability. Before the VOC, if you invested in a trade mission and the ship sank, you were on the hook. The creditors could come for your house, your land, your everything. The VOC changed the rules. The rich merchants and aristocrats who ran the company, the directors, were only liable for the initial amount they put in. These directors, they were called the Heeren 17, the Lords 17, an unaccountable, rotating board of directors who held more power than most kings. They met in secret. They set policy for continents they would never visit. They were the first true globalist Politburo, a committee of private citizens dictating global trade, war, and peace. An unelected board running the world. Sound familiar? Because of limited liability, these Lords 17 could be reckless. They could be greedy. They could start wars. And if it all went wrong, if the ships sank, if the war was lost, the public, the small-time shareholders, would be wiped out. But the founders, the insiders, their personal fortunes were untouched. A system designed to privatize all the profits, but socialize all the losses. A legal shield that encourages parasitic risk-taking at the public's expense, knowing a bailout is guaranteed, either by the state or by the system itself. Sound familiar? It's the exact architecture of too big to fail. The 2008 financial crisis wasn't a failure of the system. It was the system working as intended on a 400-year-old piece of code. And who was at the center of this new machine? Who was really pulling the strings? It was the House of Orange, the old, landed aristocracy, a dynasty that held no crown, no kingdom. They saw their old feudal world of land and titles dying. They were becoming irrelevant. So what did they do? They adapted. They couldn't rule by divine right anymore. So they would rule through the market. They didn't just support the VOC, they bankrolled it. They tied their family's future to it. They embedded themselves onto its boards. Old, powerful families seeing their relevance fade. So they pivot. They fuse their legacy power with the new, explosive power of corporate finance. They maintain their control from the shadows, sitting on the boards of the corporations, the banks, and the NGOs that really write the policy. Sound familiar? This isn't just history. It's the entire playbook of the deep state. So let's review. We have a corporation with the power of a state. We have a state that is run by a corporation. We have an elite that is accountable to neither, only to their own balance sheets. This wasn't just a company. This wasn't just a government. This was the birth of something new. The fusion. This was the first true corporate-state hybrid. It's a parasitic model. A monster that feeds on public capital but is steered by a private, unaccountable hand. It's a dragon that has the scale of a state, but the speed and ruthlessness of a corporation. And the second it was born, it changed the definition of power forever. Power was no longer in armies. It wasn't in land. It wasn't in crowns. Power was now in stock certificates. It was in debt ledgers. It was in the monopoly on trade. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange, it wasn't a temple of commerce. It was a cathedral built to worship this new, single god. The VOC, a place where you could buy and sell shares in this new global empire. This hybrid model. This is the original sin of modern finance. It's the secret code. It's the engine that allows a permanent, hereditary elite to exist inside a system that pretends to be a democracy. The VOC created the blueprint. And the families that built it, the House of Orange and the network of Amsterdam bankers, they didn't just stop in Holland. They exported the model. They exported the virus. And the first place they took it, the first upgrade they made to the system, was across the English Channel. The story of how they did it, and the name of the new company they created, a company that still controls the entire global financial system to this day. The receipt is wilder than you think. This is the deep dive. This is how the machine works. The VOC wasn't just an A-plus student. It was the teacher. It wrote the textbook that Wall Street and the City of London still use every single day. Mechanic number 1. The invention of financial products. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange wasn't just for buying and holding VOC stock. That's what the peasants did. The insiders, they started betting. They invented futures contracts, promising to buy or sell shares at a future date. They invented options, the right to buy or sell. They even invented short selling. That's right. As early as 1609, just 7 years after the VOC's founding, traders were already making massive bets on the company's failure. The most famous short seller was a man named Isaac Lemaire. He was one of the VOC's original founders. He knew, from the inside, how corrupt the accounting was. He knew the Huron 17 were cooking the books, hiding profits in private ledgers to avoid paying dividends to the public. He saw the rot. So, in 1609, he formed a bear syndicate, a secret group of traders, who all agreed to short-sell VOC stock at the same time. They were betting on a collapse. This was the first hostile attack using financial instruments. And what did the VOC do? Did they compete fairly? No. They ran to the government. They had their cronies in the state pass a law to ban short selling. They made it illegal to bet against them. Sound familiar? When the system's corruption is exposed, the insiders don't fix the system. They change the laws to make your actions illegal. They silence the dissent. Lemaire was crushed, but he had proven the point. The market was a lie. The price was whatever the Lord 17 said it was. But the real insider game was leverage. The directors allowed their friends to buy shares on margin. You didn't need to pay the full price. You could put down 10%, and the VOC itself, the company, would lend you the other 90%. This meant the insiders could control 10 times the number of shares for the same amount of money. It also meant that if the stock dipped just a little, you were wiped out. You were forced to sell. This created engineered volatility. The directors, who knew exactly when the spice ships were coming in, who knew what the secret accounting books said, could create small waves in the market and flush out all the leveraged small fish, taking their shares for nothing. But even that wasn't the real secret. The real secret was the res conter. This was the private, internal ledger. The public saw the stock price on the Amsterdam exchange. But the real trades, the big institutional trades, were settled privately inside the VOC's back office. They never hit the public market. It was the world's first dark pool, a shadow market run by the insiders, for the insiders, completely hidden from the public. So when you bought a share, you were just playing in their sandbox. They were trading in a hidden fortress. Sound familiar? Mechanic number 2, the engineered bubble. You've all heard of tulip mania, the first great financial bubble. In 1637, a single tulip bulb was trading for the price of a mansion. What the history books don't tell you is who was fanning the flames. The same VOC insiders, the same directors, were the ones who created the derivatives markets for these tulips. They pumped the bubble. They created the FOMO. They drew in the public, the farmers, the artisans, everyone. And then, at the peak, at its height in February 1637, the tulip market instantly collapsed, with prices falling over 90% in a single week. The insiders pulled the plug. The bubble burst. The public was incinerated. And who was there to buy up all the real assets, the houses, the businesses, the land, for pennies on the dollar? The same elite. It was the first engineered collapse. A test run. They learned that controlling the money was good, but controlling the psychology, the greed and fear of the masses, that was true power. Mechanic number 3, the corporate state takes over a real state. This is the upgrade. The VOC 2.0. For decades, the Dutch model was the envy of the world, especially for England, which was constantly broke and at war. So in 1688, in what they call the Glorious Revolution, who do the English Parliament invite to take the throne? William of Orange, the leader of the Dutch Republic, a director and investor in the VOC. He wasn't invited. It was a takeover, a corporate merger. And what is the very first thing William does when he becomes King of England? In 1694, William of Orange charters a new, private company, the Bank of England. This is the receipt. This is the linchpin. This is the moment the virus became airborne. Let's look closer. William of Orange, the VOC man, is now King of England. England is decimated by war with France. It's broke. The king needs money. A Scottish banker named William Patterson, a man who had studied the Dutch system, comes to the king with a proposal. It's the VOC charter, but for money. He says, "Let me and my anonymous partners, we'll call ourselves the Bank of England. Let us form a private company. We will print all the money the king needs, money created from nothing, and we will lend it to the king at 8% interest." Think about this. The audacity. A private company is given a royal monopoly to create the nation's money out of thin air and then lend that same money to the nation at interest. And who pays that interest? The king? No, the people, through taxes. It is the most perfect, parasitic, risk-free scam ever devised. The government gets its war chest. The private bankers get a permanent, guaranteed stream of income, forever, paid by the labor of an entire population. The national debt wasn't a bug in the system. It was the feature. It was the product being sold. It was debt slavery laundered as public finance. The charter was rushed through Parliament. The names of the initial investors were kept secret by law. Does any of this sound familiar? A crisis, a solution from private interests, a law rush through, and a permanent shift of wealth from the public to an unelected, unaccountable elite. It was the VOC model perfected. And this Bank of England model, this virus, is what the American founders feared most. This is the real story of the American Revolution. It wasn't just about tea. It was about who would control the money. The founders, men like Jefferson, Franklin, and Madison, knew the Dutch/English system. They knew that a private central bank, lending money to the government at interest, was not freedom. It was just a different kind of king. This is why they put the power to coin money, not to print it, directly into Congress in the Constitution. The battle between Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. That was the battle. Hamilton, the man who wanted a national bank, modeled exactly on the Bank of England. He was the agent of the VOC model. Andrew Jackson, when he vetoed the charter of the Second Bank of the United States, He wasn't a financial illiterate. He was an antibody. He was trying to kill the virus. In his veto message, he named the enemy. He said the bank was a hydra-headed monster controlled by foreign stockholders, the same European financial elite, the heirs of the VOC, who were trying to control America. Jackson won the battle. But the idea, the virus, it just went dormant. It waited. It waited for the perfect crisis. The bank's initial loan to the government was £1.2 million. Within 20 years, government debt had exploded to over £36 million. It is the perfect parasitic loop. It's engineered debt. It is the single most successful wealth extraction tool in human history. This is the true legacy of the $7.9 trillion company. The VOC itself, at its peak, had over 40 warships, 150 merchant ships, and a private army of 10,000 soldiers. It was a state that created another state. The VOC was the blueprint. The Bank of England was the franchise. And that franchise, the central banking model, was exported everywhere. The Bank of France, the Bank of Spain, and in 1913, the masterpiece, the Federal Reserve, a private banking cartel given a government charter to monopolize the world's reserve currency. It is the VOC, just in a better suit. The Dutch East India Company, the VOC, was officially dissolved in 1799. Its $7.9 trillion valuation gone. Its ships sold. Its armies disbanded. That's the official story. But you can't kill an idea. You can't kill a system. The VOC didn't die. It was nationalized. Its assets, its infrastructure, its ledgers, and most importantly, its DNA, were simply absorbed by the Dutch state. And that DNA, the corporate-state hybrid, is now the default operating system of the entire globe. We don't call it the VOC anymore. We call it too big to fail. We call it the military-industrial complex. We call it Big Pharma and their government-granted legal immunity. We call it public-private partnerships. We call it the World Economic Forum. It's the same model, a fusion of unaccountable corporate power with the coercive power of the state. The stakes today are infinitely higher. The VOC used ships. The modern machine uses data. It uses algorithmic trading. It moves at the speed of light. The next engineered collapse won't take years. It will take nanoseconds. We are living in a system built on denial, a system built on borrowed time. We're taught to trust the institutions, but the institutions were built by the same elite, using the same 400-year-old blueprint for the same purpose: to extract your wealth, your labor, and your freedom, while they hide behind the shield of limited liability. So, share this video. Get this information out. The VOC proved that a corporation, given the power of a state, is the most dangerous and parasitic force on earth. They just did it with spices. Today, they do it with money itself. So, my final question is this: are we wiser now? Or are we just walking the same path in better suits? Hit subscribe, because the next illusion we're shattering is the one that you think is keeping your money safe.